Welcome, everyone. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the world of Niccolò Machiavelli.
Oh, this is going to be good.
He's one of those figures in history that just keeps coming up.
Right.
This 16th century political thinker from Florence, Italy.
From Florence, yeah.
Still debated and dissected even today.
Absolutely, and for good reason.
Makes you think about some uncomfortable truths about,
For sure.
power and leadership.
Yeah, power and leadership.
So we've got some great source material to work with.
We do. We're using excerpts from a book,
Okay.
and the title's a mouthful.
Yeah.
It's Maquiavelo, de Príncipes, Caciques y otros animales políticos,
Wow.
which actually translates to
Okay, yeah, give us...
Machiavelli, of princes, chieftains, and other political animals.
I love that.
Yeah, it's
Perfect.
fitting, right?
It really is.
So perfect for today.
Yeah, so we're going to be trying to understand some of the ideas
Yes,
behind Machiavelli's most famous work, The Prince,
exactly.
which is really interesting because it's basically like a handbook for rulers.
On how to gain and keep power
That's right.
by any means necessary.
Any means necessary. Machiavelli was not afraid to
Yeah.
go there.
To get into that dark side.
Yeah, the darker side of human nature. He was a man of action.
Yeah.
Not just a philosopher.
Right, not some ivory tower guy.
Right, exactly. He was in the mix.
He was in it.
And his own life really shaped his views.
So this isn't just theoretical for him.
Oh, no.
This is like
Lived experience.
stuff he saw.
He was a diplomat.
Oh, wow.
So he witnessed firsthand the cutthroat politics of the Italian Renaissance.
That's a crazy time.
Oh, it was wild.
Yeah, so give us some examples of some of the things that he witnessed.
Well, he served under the Florentine Republic
Okay.
and saw how quickly things can change. He was even imprisoned
Oh, wow.
and tortured when the Medici family came back into power.
That'll change your worldview.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it was a really intense period.
Yeah.
Lots of power struggles and betrayals and all that. So that kind of explains maybe why he might be
A little jaded.
a little jaded.
Yeah, maybe a little.
Yeah. But how does all this connect to the
Yeah.
prince? Like, how did these experiences...
Well, his experiences taught him
Yeah.
that the world of politics is often brutal,
Yeah.
unpredictable.
Unpredictable for sure.
And he saw how traditional morality could actually sometimes be a liability
Malleability.
in the pursuit of power.
Oh, interesting.
So that's why in The Prince, he really emphasizes the importance of virtù.
Virtue. Okay, so let's talk about virtue.
Let's unpack that.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty important concept.
It is. It is. In Machiavelli's view,
Yeah.
virtù is not just about
Okay.
being a morally good person.
Okay, so it's not about, like, being a good guy.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's more about possessing the skills,
Oh.
the cunning,
Yeah.
the decisiveness
Okay.
that you need to succeed
As-
as a ruler.
So it's about being effective,
Effective, adaptable,
regardless of what's thrown at you.
regardless of the circumstances, yes.
So it's almost like
Yeah.
more about practical skills
But it is about
than
me.
adhering to a strict moral code. Yeah.
Okay, so morality's kind of like secondary here.
It can be.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Machiavelli believed that a ruler sometimes needs to do things
Yeah.
that we would consider unethical.
Like what kind of things are we talking about?
Well, he talks about lying,
Yeah.
cheating,
Yeah.
using violence.
Wow.
He argued that these actions could be necessary
Okay.
to achieve
Yeah.
a greater good.
A greater good. Okay, so what is the greater good?
In this case, the greater good
Yeah.
would be the stability and the security of the state.
So he's saying that,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to
Do some bad things
do some questionable things
to get a good outcome.
to get a good outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where things start to get a little
A little dicey.
dicey. Yeah, a little controversial.
Yeah. Where's the line right?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
That's the question that people have been debating
Yeah.
for centuries.
There's centuries. Yeah. And Machiavelli
He doesn't give us easy answers.
doesn't really give us any easy answers.
Right.
Yeah.
He presents this very stark view of power.
Right.
He argues that the ends often justify the means.
It's almost like
Yeah.
he's not saying that you should be
Not
cruel just to be cruel,
Exactly.
but almost like sometimes you have to
You
be.
got to do what you got to do.
Do what you gotta do.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a tough world.
Tough world. Yeah. And he
Yeah.
lived in a world where
He lived in a world
power was often seized
seized.
and maintained through brutal means.
Brutal means, that's right.
Yeah.
It wasn't that he was celebrating this,
Right.
but he was trying to understand how to navigate that reality.
So let's dive into
Yeah.
some of the specific principles that Machiavelli outlines.
Yes. Let's get into the specifics.
In The Prince. I think this is where things get really interesting.
This is where it gets good.
For our listeners.
Right.
And perhaps the most infamous
The most infamous.
principle from The Prince is the statement that
It's better to be feared than loved.
it's better to be feared than loved.
Yeah. That's a big one.
That's a bold statement.
It is bold.
Why did he believe that
Love.
fear was a
Yeah.
more effective tool than love?
He argues that love is fickle.
Okay.
It's easily lost.
Right.
Whereas fear
Yeah.
is a more consistent motivator.
So love is kind of like
It can be fleeting.
fleeting. Yeah, it comes and goes.
Right.
Fear is a little more.
Fear is a little more reliable.
Yeah.
Yeah, he believed that a ruler
Yeah.
who inspires fear
Yeah.
is more likely to be obeyed
Okay.
and less likely to be challenged.
So it's about maintaining control
Maintaining control.
through fear.
Right. But there's
Yeah.
a caveat here. Right?
Okay. What's the caveat?
He says that, ruling purely through fear,
Yeah.
you risk alienating your subjects,
Yeah.
creating resentment.
Right. So there's a balance.
There's a balance. And that's just
being a tyrant.
being a tyrant.
Right.
Yeah.
He acknowledges that a ruler should avoid being hated
Okay.
because that can lead to rebellion.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
But he maintains that a healthy dose of fear
Okay.
is necessary
Necessary.
to keep things in order.
So how do you
Yeah, that's the question.
cultivate fear
Yeah, how do you,
without crossing that line?
without going too
Out
far?
into tyranny.
Yeah, that's where virtue comes back in.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So virtue is like
Virtue is knowing.
light.
It's the wisdom, the discernment,
yeah.
knowing how to wield power effectively.
Including the power of fear.
Yes, exactly.
So this kind of brings us to another point here,
Yeah.
which is this idea of appearances.
Appearances.
Right. This was a big one for Machiavelli.
He wasn't just focused on how a ruler acts, but also how they're perceived.
Perceived. Exactly.
Right. Like image was so important to him.
Image. Absolutely.
Yeah.
He understood the power
Yeah.
of image and perception.
So it's not enough to be a good ruler.
You got to look like a good ruler.
You gotta look like one.
Right.
Okay.
He believed that a ruler should cultivate this public persona
Right.
that projects strength,
Strength,
virtue,
virtue,
piety,
piety.
even if those
Yeah.
qualities
Yeah.
aren't entirely genuine.
So it's about playing the part.
It is a bit about playing the part.
Even if you don't always feel it.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
Machiavelli recognized
Yeah.
that people are more likely to follow a leader
Right.
who appears to have admirable qualities.
So it's about
It.
it's about almost like putting on a show in a way.
Sometimes it's a performance.
Yeah.
It's recognizing the role of perception
Yeah.
in public opinion.
It's interesting to think about
It is, isn't it?
how this applies to modern day politics.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Right.
Image management is huge.
Image management, yeah. Huge.
Whether we like it or not.
Right.
These are all
Yeah.
Machiavellian principles
Machiavellian.
that are still in play today.
Yes.
So it's about, and I guess this ties back to
It does.
for virtue.
Right back to virtue.
It's the ability to adapt
Adapt.
to any situation
Right.
and
yeah.
use whatever means necessary
Whatever it takes.
to achieve your goals.
Exactly.
So a ruler with virtue understands the importance
Yeah.
of image management
Absolutely.
and uses it strategically,
Uses it to their advantage.
to achieve their political objectives.
Yes. Very much so.
They know that sometimes
Here's
you got
Harry
to
projecting that.
fake it till you make
Yeah,
it
it's different from reality
a little bit.
to maintain that control and a stability.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things
Yeah.
that always kind of fascinated me about Machiavelli
Yeah.
is his use of
Oh, yeah.
vivid metaphors.
He loved a good metaphor.
He really did. And perhaps the
This
most
is a famous one.
famous one is this idea
Yeah.
of the ruler being like
A fox and a lion?
a fox and a lion. Yeah.
That's a good one.
So what exactly do
Well, the
the fox and the lion represent in this metaphor?
The fox represents cunning,
Okay.
deception,
Deception, right.
Being clever,
Mhm.
adaptable,
Yeah.
being able to outsmart your opponents.
So that's the fox.
That's the fox.
And the lion.
The lion, on the other hand,
Yeah.
is strength,
Okay.
courage,
Yeah.
the ability to use force.
So it's like
Yeah.
you got to be
Got to be both.
a cunning strategist and a fearless warrior.
Exactly.
Okay. So a successful ruler needs to
Needs to be able to do both.
be this combination of the two.
Be both. Yeah.
Okay. And he argues
He says that.
that a ruler who relies solely on strength
Yeah, just brute force.
might be outmaneuvered
Outmaneuvered.
by a more cunning adversary.
Exactly.
Right. And then a ruler
And on the flip side,
who relies only on cunning
right, all tricks, no substance,
might lack the force
they might not be able to back it up.
to back it up.
Right.
Yeah.
So
We need both.
it's about finding that right
The
balance
right balance.
between the lion and the fox.
the fox and the lion.
Right. And knowing when
when to use which one.
to roar like a lion and when to be sly like a fox.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So it's not just about
It's more nuanced
than just being ruthless.
It's about
being intelligent.
adaptable,
Yeah.
knowing how to use both force and strategy effectively.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a strategic approach
So it's about being strategic.
to power,
Yeah.
thinking about human nature,
Yep.
thinking about how unpredictable
Yeah.
the world is.
The world is unpredictable. Yeah.
It's a messy place.
Yeah.
Politics is messy.
Politics is definitely messy.
Yeah.
Now we're just scratching the surface here.
Oh, yeah, we're just getting started.
I know we've got a lot more to delve into,
Lots more.
but before we move on,
Yeah.
I want to address
Oh.
kind of this big question
Yep.
that I'm sure is on our listeners' minds.
All right. Everyone's thinking it.
Was Machiavelli truly this cynical,
Yeah, was he
immoral thinker
a bad guy?
that some have kind of labeled him as?
Right.
Right. That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tempting to write him off as heartless,
Yeah, he seems like kind of a jerk.
especially because he's willing to advocate
Right.
for actions that we think of as
Yeah,
contradicting
Garrett,
traditional morality.
Right.
But I think it's
complex than that.
got to be more complex than
It's
that.
like black and white. Yeah. So how should we interpret
How do we understand this guy?
his ideas? What's the key
Yeah, what's the key?
to understanding Machiavelli?
Well, I think
Yeah.
we can't forget the historical context.
Yeah, the historical context.
You got to remember when he was writing,
Right.
the world was a different place.
Different place. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
he was living in a world where violence,
Right.
political instability,
Yeah.
these were normal.
This was everyday life.
This was Tuesday.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that he was condoning cruelty.
Right.
It was that he was looking for solutions.
He's trying to solve a problem.
Yeah, he was trying to figure out
Yeah.
how to achieve order
For-
and security in a world that felt like it was falling apart.
So he's looking at the world
He's looking at the world
as it was,
as it was,
not as he wished it would be.
not as he wished it was.
Right.
Exactly.
So he's a realist.
He was a realist.
And you wanted to kind
He
of
wanted to give rulers tools
equip rulers with the tools
to deal with that.
to deal with this harsh reality.
Oh, that harsh reality.
Yeah.
So while we
Yeah.
might not agree
Right. We might not
with all of his methods,
say yes to all of it.
we can appreciate
We can appreciate
the fact that he was trying
that he was trying
to grapple with this
to figure it out.
complex problem.
Yes. Big, complex problem.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we've covered a lot of ground
We had.
in this first part,
We've just started.
the tip of the iceberg.
We've explored Machiavelli's life,
Yeah.
the context of his writing,
His world
and some of his key ideas,
and big ones,
including virtue.
virtue, yeah.
Yeah.
The balance between
Fear and love.
fear and love
Right.
and the importance of appearances.
Appearances, yeah.
So we've also kind of begun to grapple
We've started to.
with the
The
complexities
complexities
of his legacy.
of his legacy. And this question of whether
The big question, right.
he was truly this cynical
Yeah.
pragmatist or this
Right.
brilliant political realist.
Yeah. Which one is it?
So in part two,
We'll keep going.
we'll dive
Yeah, we'll go deeper
even deeper
into the prince.
into the prince
Yeah.
and
Read it.
explore some
Like-
of his more controversial ideas.
Yeah, it's about to get real.
We'll also examine kind of the nuances
The nuances
of his thinking
envy.
and the ways in which
Right.
his advice can be
Yeah.
interpreted and applied.
Apply.
Stay tuned.
Can't wait. Welcome back to our deep dive into Machiavelli.
All right. So last time,
Last time.
we kind of set the stage.
Yeah.
We talked about Machiavelli the man,
Right, his life.
some of his core ideas like virtù.
Yeah, virtue, big one.
This idea that it's better to be feared than loved.
Right, that's classic Machiavelli.
The importance of appearances.
Appearances, huge.
All that good stuff. But
Oh.
now I really want to get into it.
The prince.
Yes, the prince.
Because it's one thing to talk about these ideas in the abstract,
Right.
but Machiavelli really puts them into practice.
He does. He gives you the how-to.
In this book.
It's like a playbook
Yeah, it's like...
for navigating the treacherous world of politics.
Yeah, and what I find really interesting
Yeah.
is that he doesn't just offer general advice.
No.
He breaks it down.
He gets specific.
He talks about different types of principalities
He does. Different kinds of states.
and the unique challenges they present.
Yeah, because it's not one size fits all.
Right. So, for example...
It talks about hereditary principalities,
Okay.
the ones that are passed down through family lines.
Got to like a monarchy.
Yeah, like a monarchy.
Okay.
And then he talks about new principalities.
Okay, new principalities. So these
These are the ones acquired through conquest.
Okay, so you take it over.
You take it over.
Through force.
Through force or...
Or maybe through some other means. Or, fortune smiles upon you.
Okay, you just kind of end up in charge.
You end up in charge.
Okay.
So he argues that new principalities
Yeah.
are way more difficult to rule.
Why is that?
Well, because you don't have that legitimacy.
Right.
You don't have that established power base.
Right. You're starting from scratch.
You're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So if you're a new prince...
Yeah, you're this new prince. You've just come into power.
You got to figure out how to establish authority.
Control.
Control.
What does Machiavelli recommend in this scenario?
Well, first things first.
All right.
Know your audience.
Know your audience. Okay.
Know the people you're ruling.
Yeah.
Are they used to freedom?
Right.
Do they have a strong sense of civic virtue?
So these are all factors
All these things.
you got to take into account.
It's going to shape your approach.
Okay. So it's not a
It's not a one-size-fits-all.
one-size-fits-all
Oh, you got to
approach.
be adaptable.
And this is where,
Machiavelli's his understanding of human nature
yeah, human nature comes in.
comes into play.
So what's his take on human nature?
Well, he argues that people are inherently
Yeah.
self-interested,
Self-interest. Yeah.
ambitious.
Okay.
They want what's best for themselves.
So he's not exactly
It's not exactly...
a starry-eyed idealist.
No, he's a realist.
Like a realist.
He's saying, look,
Yeah.
this is how people are,
This is how people are.
and they're more likely to respond to fear
Than love.
than love.
There's that fear thing again.
Fear, it's a powerful motivator.
It keeps coming up.
It does.
So how does he suggest
Yeah.
a new prince, this guy,
Yeah, this new guy
who's just come into power,
who's trying to figure it out.
establish this fear-based authority?
Right, without being a total jerk.
Right,
Without everyone hating
and
him.
becoming a tyrant.
Yeah. So he gets into the nitty-gritty here.
Okay, let's hear it.
He says that a new prince
Yeah.
might need to use
Okay.
force, deception, even cruelty
Wow.
to solidify their rule.
So he's not messing around.
He's not messing around.
He's saying you gotta
send a message
send a message.
that you're not to be trifled with.
Right, like don't mess with me.
Don't mess with this guy.
Yeah.
Could you give us some
Yeah, he gives some examples.
specific examples?
He talks about Cesar Borgia.
Cesar Borgia, this is one of
This is a favorite.
Machiavelli's favorite examples.
We loved this guy.
So Cesar Borgia was
He was ruthless.
ruthless. Okay, what did he do?
He used these really harsh tactics
Okay.
to eliminate his rivals,
Okay, so he's getting rid of the competition.
getting rid of the competition,
Yeah.
consolidating his power
So Machiavelli saw him as kind of
as a model for how to do it right.
okay, so even though he was ruthless,
Even though
he was
he
effective,
got the job done.
he got the job done.
Yeah.
So it's almost like he's saying,
He's saying,
sometimes you have...
sometimes you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet.
You got to break some eggs.
But where's the line?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, like at what point
At what point?
does it become too much?
Too much.
Where do we draw the line?
Well, Machiavelli believed
Yeah.
that the ends justify the means,
There it is. The ends justify the means.
especially when it comes to
Yeah.
stability,
Okay.
security.
So he's saying
He's saying that short term,
Yeah.
you might have to use some harsh tactics,
you got to do what you got to do.
but in the long run,
Yeah.
it'll lead to a more peaceful,
Okay.
prosperous state.
So he's not advocating cruelty just
Yeah.
for the sake of being cruel.
No, he's not a sadist.
But as a
He sees it as a tool,
strategic tool.
a tool
Yeah, to achieve a greater good.
to get to that greater good.
Okay.
Yeah.
This brings us to another one.
Oh, yeah.
Machiavelli's most famous ideas.
There we go.
The idea that a ruler must be
A lion
like both a lion
and a fox.
and a fox. We touched on this a little bit before,
We did.
but I want to let's unpack it.
Unpack it a bit more.
Yeah, let's go deeper.
What did he mean by this?
What did he mean?
What's the significance of the lion
The lion.
and fox?
It's this powerful metaphor for
Yep.
leadership,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
The lion,
The lion is
strength,
Oh,
courage,
okay.
that ability to command respect.
Okay.
Right.
So that's your lion.
That's your lion.
That's your strength, your force.
Force.
The fox, on the other hand,
Okay.
is cunning,
Ah,
adaptability,
okay.
the ability
What
to
else?
anticipate threats,
So thinking ahead.
thinking ahead, being
Yeah.
strategic.
So the fox is your
The fox is your brains.
brains, your strategy.
Strategy.
So you're
Oh, I
saying
gotta have both.
you can't just be strong.
Yeah.
You also have to be
You gotta be smart
smart.
and strategic.
Strategic.
Because a ruler
Right.
who relies just on brute force,
Yeah, just muscles
yeah, all brawn, no brain.
could get outmaneuvered
He's a,
by somebody who's a little more clever.
exactly.
Right? And then some of
And then if
that
you're just all tricks
who's ultra
and you can't actually back it up
you can't back it up
with any force,
with any force.
then what good is that?
Yeah, then you're not going to get
They're
anywhere.
not going to last long.
Right.
So it's about
It's about finding that balance.
no balance.
Knowing when
to roar.
to roar like a lion.
And when to be sly like a fox.
When to be sly like a fox. I love that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Okay.
So he gives some examples too.
Oh, yeah, let's hear it.
He talks about Pope Julius II.
Okay, Pope Julius II. No, he was
He was known for being bold,
just
decisive,
decisive. So he was
very lion-like.
lion-like. Okay.
And he used that reputation
Yeah.
to intimidate his enemies.
So he's using that lion energy
That lion energy.
to his advantage.
To get what he wants.
Okay.
So it's really fascinating
It is.
to see how these
Yeah.
ideas play out.
This makes me think about
Yeah.
modern leaders.
Modern leaders.
Can you think of any
Oh, that's a good one.
examples of contemporary figures
That's a tough
who
one.
kind of embody this
It's tough.
balance of strength and cunning?
I'll let our listeners ponder that one.
Yeah, think about it.
Yeah, that's something to think about.
Okay, so
Really good.
Machiavelli also had a lot to say about
Alliances.
alliances.
Yeah.
He thought they were essential.
Okay. But he also cautioned against
Don't rely on them too much.
relying on them too heavily.
Too much.
Okay, so what was his thinking there?
Well, he saw them as tools
Tools.
to be used strategically,
So alliances are like
chess pieces.
chess pieces. Okay.
You move them around
Right,
to
yeah.
advance your position.
But you
Yeah.
always got to be ready.
Be ready because
Betrayal.
betrayal. Right, because things can change.
Things change constantly.
So you got to be adaptable.
You got to be adaptable.
You got to
Have a backup plan.
have a backup plan, okay?
Alliances are important,
Yeah.
but you can't.
Cool.
Don't put all your eggs in one
Yeah,
basket.
stop. Put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
And this kind of ties back
This ties back to virtue.
to verse
You know, that-
route,
That ability to adapt,
to be flexible.
to be flexible. Because the world of politics is unpredictable.
It is. You never know
You never know.
what's going to happen next.
Who's going to stab you in the back?
Exactly.
So a ruler with virtue understands this,
Okay. So they're always
Always
ready for anything.
thinking 10 steps ahead.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, that's virtue.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
All right.
so we've talked about
We've talked about getting power,
getting power, keeping power.
keeping power.
But what about
Yeah, what about
actually governing?
governing? Like once you're there,
Once you're in charge,
what do you actually do?
what do you do?
What kind of advice does Machiavelli give?
Well, he's got some thoughts on this.
Okay, let's hear it.
He says that a ruler
Yeah.
should aim for a balance
Balance.
between being loved
Okay.
and being feared.
So this is
Yeah, it's tricky.
kind of a continuation of that idea
Yeah, it's connected.
that it's better to be feared than loved.
Exactly.
But now he's saying
But now he's saying there's a little more nuance to it.
there's some nuance to it.
Yeah. So ideally, you want both.
Okay, so ideally,
You want to be both loved
loved and feared.
and feared.
But if you have to pick one,
If you got to pick.
he's still saying go with fear.
Fear is the more reliable option
Why does he say that?
because people are fickle.
Okay, fickle.
Yeah, they can change their mind.
They can change their minds.
Yeah, love can fade,
Love can fade.
especially if they sense weakness
Weakness.
in their leader.
So it's almost like
Yeah,
fear keeps people in line.
fear keeps them in check.
But love doesn't necessarily
Doesn't have that same guarantee of loyalty.
Okay.
So it's not that he's advocating for
Yeah.
like a reign of terror.
He's not saying be a tyrant.
No, not
But
necessarily.
he's saying you gotta
You got to use fear
use fear.
strategically
Oh, okay.
to maintain order,
Okay.
to prevent chaos.
So it's like a balancing act.
It's a balancing act.
Right. How do you
Yeah, how do you do that?
strike that balance
How do you be feared,
between being feared
but not hated?
but not hated?
That's the question.
Right. And that's where I guess
That's where virtue comes in again.
virtue. Okay.
Right.
So virtue is
Virtue is knowing
knowing how much is enough.
how much is enough,
Yeah.
how to punish effectively
Okay.
without being cruel just to be cruel.
Right. So
It's not about cruelty.
it's about strategy.
It's about strategy.
It's about using
It's about using
the right amount of force
the right amount
to get the outcome you want.
to get the desired outcome.
Okay. And Machiavelli even suggests
He does that a ruler should be generous
generous.
in rewarding their loyal followers.
Okay, so it's
You know.
not all
Not all stick. There's some carrot in there.
there's some carrot too.
Yeah.
So it's about
It's about using all the tools at your disposal.
all the tools.
Generosity can be a tool.
Generosity, okay.
Yeah, as long as you use it
As long as you're strategic about it.
strategically.
Okay, so this brings us to another
Another big one.
kind of interesting aspect
War.
of Machiavelli's thinking, his view on war.
Oh, yeah. War. He loved war.
He didn't exactly shy away from it.
No, he did not.
So what did he have to say about war?
Well, he saw it as
Yeah.
inevitable.
Inevitable. Okay.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
So you got to be ready for it.
You got to be
A
ready.
ruler
Yeah.
has to be skilled
Okay.
in war,
In the art of war.
in the art of war,
Okay.
and prepared to defend
Defend their state.
their state
Okay.
against all threats,
Both internal and
internal and external.
and external.
So
Yeah.
a Machiavellian ruler
A Machiavellian ruler,
is not just a politician.
not just a talker.
They're also a warrior.
They got to be a warrior.
They got to be ready to fight.
Ready to fight. Absolutely.
Okay. And he emphasizes
Having a strong army.
strong army, loyal army.
Loyal army. That's key.
Okay, but well,
Didn't he also
also
say
say
something about mercenaries?
mercenaries, like be careful
Be careful about mercenaries.
about using
That
mercenaries.
isn't always reliable.
You're not always loyal.
No, they're in it for the money.
Right. So you gotta
You got to be careful who you trust.
be careful who you trust.
Exactly.
So it's all about
It's all about
self-reliance.
self-reliance.
Being able to
Yeah.
defend your own interests.
Defend your own interests.
Even if it means
war.
going to war.
Exactly.
And this all goes back to virtue.
Virtu, there it is.
Right. It's
About being adaptable.
being adaptable.
It's about being strategic. It's about understanding that sometimes
Sometimes you got to use force.
you got to use force.
Sometimes you got to be cunning.
You got to be cunning.
And you got to
Be ready
be ready for anything.
for anything.
Because the world of politics is
It's a jungle out there.
a jungle out there.
It's messy.
It's messy, it's unpredictable.
Unpredictable.
And it's often
Brutal.
brutal.
Yeah.
So
Machiavelli was a realist.
he was a realist.
He was trying to show people
Yeah.
how the world really worked.
Not how we wish it worked,
Not how we want it to be,
but how it actually is.
how it is.
All right, so we've really dug into Machiavelli,
Yeah, we've gone deep
his life, his idea.
on all the good stuff. But you know, one of the things that really strikes me
Yeah,
is that he's still so relevant.
he is, isn't he?
Like centuries later,
Yeah, people are still talking about him,
people are still arguing about him,
debating him.
citing him.
Absolutely.
So clearly, this guy struck a nerve.
He tapped into something.
He tapped into something, yeah.
Timeless.
Yeah. So let's talk about Machiavelli's legacy.
His legacy, okay.
How have his ideas been received
Yeah, how have people reacted to this guy?
throughout history?
Right.
Let's start with
Yeah,
the critics.
the haters
Right.
who didn't like Machiavelli.
Yeah, who were some of his most vocal opponents.
Well,
Yeah.
the Catholic Church.
The Catholic Church, okay.
They were not fans.
Why not?
Well,
Yeah.
you know, Machiavelli was all about
Yeah.
separating politics from morality.
Right. The ends justify the means.
And the church was like,
Yeah.
uh-uh,
Not so much.
that's not how we do things.
So they saw this as a threat
As a threat
to their authority.
to their authority.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, they're all about morality. And Machiavelli's saying,
Yeah.
sometimes you got to bend the rules.
You got to get your hands dirty.
A little bit, yeah.
And they weren't the only ones.
No.
Oh.
A lot of thinkers
A lot of things
throughout history.
found his ideas
Unsettling.
unsettling. Yeah, a little bit
Dangerous even.
dangerous. Yeah, it's easy to see why
Right.
Machiavelli's willingness to say, hey, sometimes you got to lie. You got to cheat.
Shoot.
You got to use violence.
Do whatever it takes.
That would have been pretty shocking
I'd
in
say
his
so.
time,
Back then.
especially given the dominance of
The church.
Catholic Church.
Christian morality.
Right. He's going
It's
for
going against the grain.
the grain.
Big time.
So he's this
Oh,
rebel, this
What are you gonna do?
troublemaker, shaking things up.
shaking things up. Yeah.
And he's emphasizing virtù
Virtue.
over traditional virtues
sure.
like compassion, forgiveness, kindness. He's saying that's not
Not so important.
Not as important
For a ruler.
for a ruler. Yeah.
Interesting.
It is interesting. So,
Yeah.
not surprising
Not surprising.
that the prince got banned.
Damn. Well,
Church.
oh, yeah. They did not like that book.
They did not like that book. Okay, so
Right.
he had his critics.
He had his critics.
But did he have
He had his fans.
any fans?
Oh, yeah.
People who actually liked his ideas.
People who loved him.
Okay.
Not just in his time,
Yeah.
throughout history.
Throughout history. Okay.
There are
But
mixed
then-
examples.
Well, it's hard to say.
For sure.
Like, who is truly Machiavellian?
Yeah, who really embodied it.
But there are definitely some interesting parallels.
Parallels, yeah.
So, for example,
Napoleon.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Napoleon, a fan of Machiavelli.
He loved Machiavelli.
Interesting.
He even had his own copy of The Prince.
Of the Prince.
Okay.
With his own notes.
Wow.
Like he was really studying it.
He was taking notes.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Right.
Napoleon, the master strategist.
The conqueror.
The conqueror, yeah.
He was all about
He was all about power.
power.
So it makes sense
Yeah.
that he would
He would loved Machiavelli.
find Machiavelli's work appealing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So is there a pattern here?
Is there a pattern?
Is it that
Yeah.
Machiavelli's ideas tend to resonate
With certain types.
with people who are
Yes.
already kind of inclined
Towards ruthlessness.
towards ruthlessness?
Ambition.
Maybe.
It's tempting to think that.
It's tempting to think that,
But
but
maybe
it's a little more complex.
it's more than that.
Yeah.
Machiavelli was offering
Yeah.
a framework
Uh-huh.
for understanding power.
Okay.
He's saying, look,
Yeah.
this is how it works.
This is how the world works.
Take off your rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
This is reality.
So he's not necessarily
Promoting immorality.
saying be a bad person,
But he's saying,
giving you this lens
here's a way to see it,
to see the world.
how power works,
How power works. Yeah.
whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. Okay, so this raises a big question.
Yeah.
Can Machiavelli's ideas
Can you be Machiavellian
be applied ethically?
and be a good person?
Right. Is there a way
To
be
schools
without becoming a tyrant?
without being a jerk.
Without being a jerk, yeah.
That's the big question.
That is the question.
Right. That's what people have been wrestling with
Yeah.
for centuries.
Yeah, he's given us these ideas.
He's given us these tools.
But how do we use them?
How do you use them?
Responsibly.
Responsibly and ethically.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It is tough.
He doesn't give us easy answers.
He doesn't.
He says, here's the world.
Yeah, here it is.
Figure it out.
So it's up to us
It's up to us.
to decide how to use.
how to use
this power.
This power, yeah.
It's like a weapon.
Like a weapon.
Right.
You can use it
You can use it
for good. For good.
or for evil.
Or for evil.
It depends
It depends on the wielder.
on the person using it.
So I think that's a really important takeaway
A big takeaway
from this deep dive.
from our Machiavellian journey.
Right. Machiavelli.
He was a product of his time.
He was, yeah.
A violent time.
A violent time.
An unstable time.
Yeah. But his
Different
insight
insights.
into human
Is
nature,
into how people work.
how power works,
Strategy.
they're still relevant today.
They're still relevant.
Absolutely.
And I think we
Yeah.
can all learn from that.
we can all learn.
Even if
We don't agree with
we don't agree with all of his methods.
everything he said.
Right. So it's about
It's about
taking those insights
taking what's useful.
and applying them
Yeah, applying it
to our own lives.
to your life.
Right. And maybe becoming a little bit
real-
more Machiavellian,
Machiavellian
but in a good way.
in a good way,
Right.
right? Using that knowledge
Using that knowledge
for good,
for good,
not for evil.
not for evil.
Right.
So that's our deep dive
That's it.
into the world of Niccolò Machiavelli.
The one and only.
We hope you've enjoyed
Hope you learned something.
this exploration
Yeah.
of power,
Of power and
ambition,
and the choices
the choices we make
we make in this crazy world.
in this crazy world.
Yeah.
So,
What do you think?
yeah, what do you think?
Was Machiavelli
Was he a genius
a cynical genius
or was he a realist?
or a brilliant realist?
Yeah, let us know.
Let us know.
What are your thoughts
Share your thoughts
on social media?
on social.
Keep the conversation going. Keep the conversation going, yeah.
We love to hear from you.
We love to hear from you.
So until next time,
Until next time,
keep exploring.
keep exploring.